I'm trying to think over here.
I'd like to know where the they got that photo of me with my short hair. Like, do they have access to Google?
This is Leonid Greiser, who's on trial in Russia for stabbing his own sister, Ariana Korol, to death. The 18-year-old confessed to the brutal murder following his arrest by police in Moscow, claiming that Satan ordered him to do it. The dangerous criminal is confined to a secure glass box in Sherbinski District Court for the duration of the trial to ensure the safety of the guards, court employees, and other civilians. Greiser approaches the narrow open panel of the box, and there's a short verbal exchange with the courtroom guard. He retreats behind the tinted window, but suddenly stops dead in his tracks as an idea comes to him. Watch again as the expression flickers across Greiser's face in a moment of dawning realization. With an air of intent and determination, he stoops down, putting his hands through the narrow horizontal window, gripping the outer panel as he tries to pull his upper body through the opening. Unfortunately for him, his head is too big to fit, so instead, he leans back and swings his right leg out of the window, hoping to exit feet first. Watch as the female guard puts her hands through the window to grab his leg, and he moves back towards the center of the box, out of reach of the officers. However, another plan has started to form for Greiser, and he looks toward the ceiling of the box, searching for an alternative escape route. Seeing that the situation was about to evolve further, the male courtroom officer beckons him back toward the access window to divert his attention. They speak for a minute, and Greiser seems to calm down. However, just as it seems that peace is restored, the situation takes an unbelievable turn. Greiser jumps onto the low bench in the box and begins to squeeze his way up through an extremely narrow gap between the ceiling slats. Officers stand by, seemingly not too worried as the defendant anchors a leg on either side of the box, shimmying further up through the top. But when he gets high enough that his head displaces the styrofoam ceiling tile, the guards realize that they're in trouble, and they spring into action. Watch as the three officers try to climb up to reach Greiser as his body disappears through the courtroom ceiling. Despite his legs being held by two guards and beaten with a baton by the third, Greiser continues to move upwards, wriggling so furiously that his pants come off into the hands of one of the officers. More guards arrive for backup, and one approaches the escapee's leg, brandishing a taser. Somewhat nervous of being tased, Greiser knocks two of the ceiling tiles through from the attic side and pleads with the officer not to do it.
Помогите! Помогите мне! Помогите мне! Помогите мне! Дайте мне руку!
The guard continues to wave the taser near Greiser's leg, and he starts to come back down through the ceiling, bringing a tangle of wires and tiles with him. Eventually, Greiser lowers himself back into the box, pulls his pants back up, and the hearing continues with him in handcuffs to prevent any further escape attempts. The daring defendant was ultimately found guilty of the murder, and he told the court that he had no regrets about what he did, as he was sentenced to mandatory psychiatric medical treatment. While the impending threat of imprisonment caused Greiser's body to spring into action to escape, some defendants, like Diana Lovejoy, face the opposite challenge. Lovejoy is in court charged with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder for a botched murder-for-hire plot in which her soon-to-be ex-husband was shot in 2016. The mother of one, who was known for her YouTube videos on cooking before her arrest, stood accused of hiring her gun instructor, Weldon McDavid Jr., to shoot and kill her husband, Greg Mulvihill. Lovejoy and Mulvihill had been going through a contentious divorce at the time, and as part of the final agreement, Mulvihill was required to pay her ex-husband $120,000. Following a dramatic trial, Lovejoy has been called back into the courtroom in Vista, San Diego, to hear the jury's verdict. It's a tense moment, and Diana bows her head toward the desk in nervous anticipation. As the forewoman announces that she has been found guilty, Lovejoy's shock is clearly evident, and her eyes widen as she looks at her defense attorney in horror. She continues to look stunned and aghast as the forewoman reads on, and she leans back in her seat with her eyes closed as she tries to process what is happening. Given the cold-blooded nature of the crime she has just been found guilty of, you won't believe what happens next.
All right, we're going to need to take a break. And if we could have
case you missed it, watch again as she disappears out of the frame here before being quickly caught and lifted back into her seat by the prison guard. Although her eyes are open, Lovejoy seems to be in a catatonic state, and her head rolls about uncontrollably. The prison guard attempts to get her into a standing position, but a seemingly rigid Lovejoy collapses to the ground, eyes still fixed open. She's placed in the recovery position before receiving medical attention from a doctor present in the courtroom, who thinks she might be suffering from shock. Though prosecutor Jody Breton suspects the whole incident could have been faked,
I am skeptical because she's somebody who will hire a person to kill her ex-husband.
Lovejoy is taken from the court to a waiting ambulance on a stretcher. After recovering from what ER doctors deem to be just a fainting episode, Lovejoy is brought back to court, where she is sentenced to 26 years to life for her crimes. Some incidents of malingering in court are more dramatic than others, and the case of Keison Wilkins could be the most dramatic yet. Wilkins is representing himself in an Ohio courtroom against multiple charges of assault and weapons violations in connection with the 2004 shooting. Following a dramatic first day of the trial, where the judge needed to clear the courtroom a number of times due to Wilkins' antics, day 2 is already starting off on the wrong foot. The hearing kicks off with the judge asking Wilkins if he has any witnesses present in court today.
Mr. Wilkins, do you have any witnesses here present today?
To which Wilkins replies that he does not. He tells the judge that he needs more time to prepare his defense, to which the judge admonishes him, telling him that he had months to prepare.
You've had months to research this matter. This is why I suggested to you that you have counsel.
Not willing to give Wilkins any more time, the hearing proceeds, and the prosecution calls a policeman to the stand as a witness. Once they have concluded their questioning, Wilkins begins his cross-examination, and you won't believe what happens next. Watch again as Wilkins falls to the ground, and court deputies rush to his aid. The judge, already familiar with Wilkins' flair for drama, seems unperturbed, and she calmly calls for the courtroom to be cleared yet again. The officers, who are trained medics, lift him back up into his chair, and a nurse checks him over, deeming there to be nothing wrong with him. See here how Wilkins sits, slumped in the chair, seemingly unconscious, as the judge asks for it to be put on the record that his breathing appears to be normal, and he seems to be acting as if he is asleep. The situation becomes even more bizarre as a deputy waves smelling salts under Wilkins' nose,
A remarkable change.
causing him to suddenly throw his head backwards and make a miraculous recovery from his feigned heart attack. The judge carries on with the hearing as Wilkins continues to sit in his chair with his head thrown back, and she reprimands him for his continued disruptive behavior. Despite being deemed healthy, Wilkins is eventually lifted from the seat and taken out of court in a wheelchair. Ultimately, his behavior didn't do him any favors, and he is sentenced to 42 years in prison. If you think Wilkins' antics were audacious, wait until you see Daniel Nicholson's attempt to escape the scales of justice. 35-year-old Nicholson is appearing at Christie's Beach Magistrates Court in Adelaide, South Australia, for a bail hearing in relation to weapons offenses and driving charges that he is facing. He has a long history of petty crime and drug use, and before attending court today, he got high on methamphetamines. As Magistrate Sue O'Connor announces that Nicholson's bail is being revoked, the drugged-up defendant stands up and pleads with her, putting his hands in the air. Nicholson was expecting to leave the court on bail again today.
No, you can stop.
And he's not happy to hear that this will not be the case. The judge orders him to sit down, but Nicholson becomes more irate and agitated. As shocking as Nicholson's earlier behavior has been, suddenly, things take a more dramatic turn. A sheriff's officer enters the dock to take control of the situation and calm Nicholson down, but instead, Nicholson jumps up onto the side of the dock, trying to climb over the glass panel at the top. Two officers grab him in an attempt to get him down, and he wrestles with one of them, locking arms as he falls back into the dock. He quickly springs back up and vaults to the dock, landing on the desk, as a police prosecutor wrangles him to the ground, pulling his pants down in the process. Watch again as Nicholson moves with seemingly superhuman strength to get out of the dock. It doesn't end there, and the struggle continues across the floor of the courtroom. Nicholson's supporters, who were sitting in the hall outside, storm the courtroom. One woman is holding Nicholson's young son in her arms, and she begs the guards for mercy. You can hear her here screaming and pleading that Nicholson is a sick man. Officers eventually restrain Nicholson, placing him in handcuffs. 2 of the sheriff's officers involved were injured. Nicholson was jailed for at least 12 months for the escape attempt, with the judge telling him to grow up, get clean, or face many more years behind bars. While actions like Nicholson's can be explained away by a desire to evade imprisonment, some behavior by defendants in court is so bizarre that no logical reasoning can be found for it, like in the case of Christopher Teel. Teel is appearing before Superior Judge Karen Donahue in King County Courtroom, Seattle. The 26-year-old is charged with rape and unlawful imprisonment after an incident where it was alleged he followed a woman into the bathroom at a car dealership, locked her in a stall, and sexually assaulted her. The victim had dropped her car off for servicing moments before the attack, which was only stopped when dealership employees broke into the stall and pulled Teel, who was 6 foot 3 inches tall, off the woman. Teel's behavior in custody has been erratic up until now, and he's been involved in a number of violent incidents, including trying to headbutt a detective who was questioning him about the incident at the car dealership. A psychiatric evaluation that was conducted found that he was capable of understanding the criminal charges that had been filed against him. The psychologist concluded that he may be feigning the symptoms of a psychiatric disorder. So today, he's in court for a competency hearing. Watch his demeanor as he enters the courtroom and looks around in a seemingly dazed state. His court-appointed attorney, Reed Birkland, stands next to him. Teel's handcuffs are removed by the jail guard, and the defendant continues to look around in a confused manner. As the prosecutor kicks off the hearing, Teel reaches his arm out towards his defense attorney, and the court officer grabs his arm down and tells him to stand still. You won't believe what happens next. Teel laughs, and then without warning or provocation, he turns to Birkland again and slaps him sharply. In case you missed it, here it is again. Watch as one court officer immediately grabs Teel by the back of the head, while the other holds him by the shoulders as they bring him to the ground. This officer eventually manages to get the cuffs back on the 250-pound man, and another officer calls to the back of the courtroom for an attendant to bring a restraint chair to strap Teel into.
Chair. Move the chair.
There aren't any restraint chairs to hand, but the officers place a spit hood over his head, and he's led from the courtroom. Birkland declines to press charges, but he removes himself from the case. But the craziness doesn't end there. 2 weeks later, Teel's back in the courtroom again for another competency hearing. This time, officers are taking no chances, and he's wheeled in front of the judge, strapped into a restraint chair. Before the hearing concludes, Teel interrupts, and unbelievably, he proceeds to complain loudly about the fact that his hair is short in his mugshot.
I'd like to know where the they got that photo of me with my short hair. Because that was on Facebook, and I don't have a Facebook.
The attorney tries to get back on track, but Teel again shouts over him, asking nonsensical questions.
Legitimate questions. Like, do they have access to Google?
Teel is eventually deemed competent to stand trial, and after being found guilty, he's sentenced to 8.5 years to life for his crimes. It's clear from the case of Christopher Teel that attorneys often find themselves at the receiving end of bad behavior from their clients. But as you will see in the case of Alexis Plunkett, some attorneys fight back in the most serious way. Plunkett's story is already a crazy one. She's a qualified criminal defense and civil rights attorney who runs her own practice in Las Vegas, Nevada. She's used to being on the other side of courtroom operations, defending clients and fighting in their corner. And in a way, that is what has landed her in court in the first place. Plunkett stands accused of 2 counts of conspiracy to unlawfully possess a cell phone by a prisoner, and 12 counts of possession of a cell phone by a prisoner. This is after she was found to have handed her cell phone to a client of hers to use while visiting him in the county jail 2 years earlier. Not only that, but the client in question, Andrew Aravallo, is also Alexis Plunkett's boyfriend. Not exactly the type of judgment calls you would like to see from an attorney. The cell phone charges are a felony offense, and Plunkett is facing up to a year in prison for them. Plunkett's actions and lack of common sense in relation to the matter have been appalling, and it's about to get a whole lot worse for her in court when the investigating officer takes the stand. He testifies that when police seized Plunkett's phone, they found text messages that she had sent to a group of 6 other attorneys, claiming that she had ordered a hit on Andrew Aravallo. Plunkett finishes the message with the words, "Delete this," followed by a smiling emoji. When one of the other attorneys called her out on it and told her not to joke about things like that, Plunkett responded by saying she wasn't joking. She justifies her actions, saying that Arevalo told her he would have her killed, so she wanted to have him killed first. Judge Michael Villani questions the officer about the texts before offering his own opinion to Plunkett, which, as you would expect, is not very lighthearted.
Plunkett, this is bizarre. There's nothing to say. Who in the right mind would send these texts? Like I said, I've been doing this since 1982, and I've never even heard of this, let alone seen this.
Despite the prosecution asking for Plunkett to be remanded in custody, she's released on bond.
The trial is firm. It's going forward. If you have any motions, file them now. This will not be moved.
But following in her previous pattern of poor judgment, it isn't long before she finds herself back in court again, this time accused of intimidating one of the witnesses in her case. The charge comes after Plunkett made a post on social media calling a potential witness a snitch. The prosecution again asks that her bond be denied, reminding the judge of the nature of the text messages.
She has said in these texts what she wanted to do. She wanted to have Mr. Arevalo killed or beaten down severely. She mentioned who would do it.
This time, Judge Villani agrees.
She is to be held without bail pending the trial in this matter.
In the end, Plunkett makes a plea deal with the prosecution, pleading guilty to one count of possession of a telecom device by a prisoner. In exchange, the charges of intimidating a witness are dropped. Plunkett is sentenced to 3 years probation and is prohibited from practicing law for 5 years. And ultimately, Nevada Supreme Court permanently disbarred Plunkett. Alexis Plunkett paid a heavy price for sneaking a phone to her boyfriend in jail. In a similar fashion, Spencer Boston also found himself in hot water for sneaking something into the courtroom that wasn't allowed, but for entirely different reasons. Boston is appearing before Judge Haywood Berry on some relatively light charges. He'd been stopped for speeding by officers, and upon searching the vehicle, they found the Tennessee man to be in possession of a small amount of marijuana. His case is called, and Boston approaches the podium, unbuttoning his jacket to reveal a bright tie-dyed t-shirt. The defense attorney addresses the judge, telling him that Boston has requested to represent himself, while Boston stands patiently.
Mr. Boston, he said he wants to represent himself in this case.
However, Boston has some very strong feelings about the law, and he's about to make them be known.
I think it's very unfair, the marijuana law here. I think we the people deserve better because marijuana is a very harmless drug, and it's been around for ages, since the 80s, 90s.
Judge Berry quickly puts an end to Boston's speech, though he accepts that the law is probably unfair with regard to the criminalization of marijuana.
Heard that baloney all my life, so don't go any further on that.
He gets the hearing back on track, asking Boston if he wants to face trial for the offenses.
But if you want a trial, we can give you a trial.
And when Boston says that he does, the judge consults with the court employees to set the bureaucratic wheels in motion. What happens next is a bold feat of temerity. Watch as Boston reaches into his jacket pocket. Amazingly, none of the court officers even notice what he's doing as he pulls out a joint and puts it into his mouth.
Hey, we the people deserve better.
In case you missed it, here is the incredible moment again. For his boldness, Boston gets an additional charge of disorderly conduct and contempt of court, as well as a second charge for possession of marijuana. He later gives an interview explaining how he managed to smuggle the offending joint into court without it being discovered.
I ended up taping it to my actual chest.
Boston spent 10 days in court for contempt before being released on a $3,000 bond. Boston's actions were considered disrespectful to the court, but sometimes defendants take it to a whole other level and directly target the judge. And that's exactly what happened in the case of Alan McCarty. McCarty's story begins outside of the courtroom when he's embroiled in a contentious child custody case with his ex-wife. His kids are removed from him, and he mistakenly believes that a circuit court judge named Stasio Warren is at fault. Obviously enraged, McCarty phones the Volusia County Sheriff's Office in Florida to sound off about the situation.
Communications, Warhurst.
Yeah, I want to report a crime that's about to happen.
What do you mean a crime that's about to happen?
Yeah, there's about to be a crime that's going to happen if my kids don't come back to me, you stupid bitch. Because your stupid judges don't want to bring people to courtrooms. I got a gun pointed at your building.
Sir, what is going on?
Who the you calling, sir, you stupid bitch? Where's your Judge Warren at? You gonna bring that bitch out in handcuffs and I'm gonna execute that son of a bitch right in the street. I'm letting you know I'm gonna shoot this bitch. You gonna give me my kids?
Where are you at, sir?
I just told you I'm outside of her building waiting for her to get there in the morning. I'm gonna pop a cap in you stupid.
Officers thankfully managed to track McCarty down and arrest him, charging him with making a threat against a sitting judge. Here he is in court for a pretrial hearing, and from the moment he enters the courtroom, it's clear that his volatile nature hasn't calmed down in the intervening months.
What a bunch of guys, you stupid piece of
Then also,
You threatened my life,
in the
you
back room.
suck my
Things get more strained when McCarty is asked to raise his right hand to swear an oath.
No, I was not sworn in. I've never been sworn in this court.
So that being said, number one, I need to know whether or not you want to be here during the trial process.
No.
All right, do you want to testify?
No, I don't. This is all being done unconstitutionally, unrightfully.
Do you want to be in the room or not?
Do you want to suck my...
I prefer not to, sir.
The judge admonishes him, setting McCarty off on another expletive-driven tirade, and continues a back-and-forth argument with Judge Foxman before unleashing a shocking volley of insults.
My daddy owns the building and I look like a f***ing idiot, huh? Brought your dress today, you little f***ing prick. You wanna take my kids from me and act like that? You and that Shut the f*** up. I'm trying to think over here.
He's eventually ordered from the court by Foxman.
No, I'm not standing. Not resisting. I'm not resisting. I'm just not standing up. I'm not standing. I don't have to stand.
And, due to his continued outbursts, McCarty spends much of the actual trial in a room behind the courtroom, where he could hear the proceedings through a speaker and watch through mirrored glass. As Judge Foxman sentences him, giving him 20 years in prison for threatening the judge, and a further 10 days in jail for his actions in the courtroom throughout the trial process. Perhaps the most incredible thing about this case is that Judge Warren, who McCarty made the original threats against, wasn't even the judge who made the decision in the custody case. And on top of this, it emerged that McCarty didn't even have custody of the kids to begin with.
Take my kids from me and act like that? You and that.
Over the course of the trial, he insulted almost everyone involved in the process, including his very own public defender. McCarty's mother was present in court during the sentencing hearing, and although she didn't want to speak, McCarty's attorney Ryan Bellinger said that Mrs. McCarty did wish to apologize for her son's behavior in court over the process of the trial.